Welcome to the American Theatre Wing's Working in the Theatre seminars. These come to you from the Graduate Center of the City University of New York. As founders of the American Theatre Wing's Antoinette Perry Tony Award and president of the Wing, I'm so happy to be able to bring you these seminars. They offer a unique opportunity to hear performers, producers, playwrights, directors, designers, and a host of theater professionals discuss the realities of working in the theater. And since we introduced them in 1973, more than 900 of Broadway's and off-Broadway's best have participated. The Wing, however, is more than the Tony Awards, which are proudly given in recognition of distinguished achievement in the theater every year. We are, besides that, a continually expanding organization with year-round programs dedicated to serving the theater and the community. The Wing began as a volunteer organization, and today, most of the work we are able to do is because of the volunteers who give so willingly of their time. We are a source that helps develop new audiences, and because of that, we initiated Introduction to Broadway in 1991, and since then have enabled over 70,000 New York City high school students to attend a Broadway show, many for the first time. We continue to reach out with our newest program, Theater in Schools, through which professionals like those you will meet today volunteer to go into classrooms to discuss working in the theater. This in-classroom targets every facet of the business of theater, from playwrights and directors to press agents and poster artists. And not only do we want young people to become theater goers, but we want them to know the wide range of other job opportunities that exist in our business. We are a means of bringing the magic of theater to thousands who cannot get to the theater itself. The Wing Hospital program dates back to World War II and the Stage Door Canteen. It continues with performers from Broadway, off-Broadway, and the cabaret world volunteering their time to do nearly 100 shows each year in nursing homes, veterans hospitals, children's wards, and aid centers in the New York area. We are proud to be of service and happy to have a wonderful working relationship with the theatrical community, and so grateful to everyone who makes what the American Theatre Wing does possible. We hope that you will enjoy and learn from today's panel, which is on Sideshow, the production, the people that made it all possible. And now I would like to introduce Emanuel Azenberg, producer, Joseph Niederlander, producer, who should be here shortly, Abbie Strassler, general manager, Bill Evans, press agent, and our loyal and distinguished moderator, George White, president of the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center, and esteemed director both here and abroad. Enjoy and learn from today's panel.
Thank you, Isabel. I would like to, first of all, we are obviously focusing on the marvelous production of Sideshow, but there is an aspect to this which has been before, which is on these particular aspects of the seminar, which could be called, but we'd have to steal the title, From Option to Opening. But then also, I think beyond that, is there life after opening? That certainly is one of the things we should talk about today. The show, as this is being taped, has been open exactly 2 weeks today, with wonderful reviews. So I would like to, first of all, start the first question to Emanuel Azenberg and say, how's it going?
Broad question, George.
Purposely.
Artistically, I think it's magnificent. I think it's, in modesty, to say that I've done a few shows on Broadway, and I feel that this is the best one. And I know that might offend some other friends of mine, but I'm very proud of this, and the audience that comes stands up and screams and yells, and I hope is touched for the reasons that we intended to do the show. financially, we struggled in the preview period because Sideshow is perceived to be about Siamese twins. It isn't. It's about all of you. And that's being discovered by the audiences, so that the word of mouth and the good notices and the advertising campaign, which Bill is running, has doubled the amount of money we've been taking in. And I think this week, and if not this week, certainly next week, the show will move into profit. So from an artistic point of view, we're very happy. From an economic point of view, we are, thank God. And if it were not to make it, I would be equally proud of it.
How many are in the cast?
22 plus 8. 22 on the stage, 8 covers and understudies.
So you've got a 30 cast. How, Bill, how do you, since Manny brought it up about selling the show and Siamese Twins, what did you have to deal with, and how did you structure that from day one when you, I guess it was 5.5 years in evolution, right? Something like that.
It's a genuine consumer issue. It's a consumer sort of preconception about, and I had the same one. As Manny said, well, we're going to do a musical. Now, what's it about? Siamese Twins. Like, oh, you know, you have that reaction. And it turns out that this particular show, once you get in the door, it just opens your heart and your head through the whole thing, and it's a really terrific journey. But what we did in these, if you can see these posters, the Sideshow posters, that we wanted to create an impression of the era, of the time, of a sideshow tent, of a crowd looking inside a tent. We now, in the post-opening ads, are opening the curtain. So behind the curtain, inside the tent, which we've been saying, come inside the tent, you're now going to see these two beautiful young women who are playing Daisy and Violet Hilton.
Why did you decide that?
Well, because if we didn't want to, there was a certain mystery we wanted to maintain coming up to the opening, so it wouldn't be the only issue. Because if you announce that, then it's going to be, every single thing is going to be only about that. So we wanted to create an aura, as it were. And I think it was effective for many people. And the idea that something's going on inside there that you want to see. And so that's where we are now, and I think we'll just keep opening the curtain. But these new ads, I think, are really terrific, because you look at these two beautiful women and you think, oh, that's, you know, like to see them, as opposed to what you think in your head is maybe some kind of grisly visual, and it's anything but.
Now, who makes those decisions? I mean, obviously, you're the lead decider on this, but how do you interact with this? Who plans this? Well,
I will say, Robert Longbottom is the director and choreographer, and he conceived this project 5.5 years ago. He was watching late-night television and watched a movie called Chained for Life, which was a horrible B movie which starred the real-life Hilton sisters. And so his head started going then, and he put it together with Henry Krieger and Bill Russell. So he has been a major element in every step of the presentation of it, of the advertising, and obviously of what you see on the stage. So his sensibility was very crucial. In this case, it's not always the case.
I was going to say, it's not unusual for him to be in advertising.
A little bit, yeah, because he is so careful and wants everything to reflect exactly what he's doing. And Manny and he have a relationship that's I think also very healthy, because they share a lot of what they're after, and then we go into an ad agency and we look at these things on the floor, and you never know. It's anybody's guess.
Can I go all the way back? How did you establish this relationship? Well, had you worked on shows, or had, as I understand, he not?
I was invited to a presentation about 3 years ago, and it was then titled Song of the Siamese Twins. They didn't tell me that before I got there. If they would have told me that, I wouldn't have gone. So I understand what that preconception is. I said, it's Siamese Twins, and I almost killed the guy who took me. I mean. And then I heard it. It was a little bit more Dickensian in those days, and I thought it was interesting. They said, would you like to produce it? And I said, no. But we did have a meeting, and we spent 2.5 hours discussing it in detail. And I said, I won't produce it, but I'll be your friend. It's a little arrogant, but it was not arrogantly intended. And the play and the piece evolved. We did pay for 2 major presentations, and after the second presentation, which was 2 years later, it took a shape that we really liked. So we said, we'll have a workshop. The presentation.
What's the difference between a presentation and a workshop?
The presentation costs about $15,000, where you do kind of a concert. The performers rehearse for a couple of hours, and the director just has them sit there and sing and talk. The workshop is full, a 5-week rehearsal period with minimal scenery and lighting and costumes. In this case, we did it at a legitimate theater. We had the cooperation of the community, actually, the stagehands and everybody.
Where was that?
At the Richard Rogers, where we played.
Right on the stage.
And then we saw Bobby Longbottom's work, which was stunning. I think that this is, every once in a while, every 2 generations or so, somebody comes by that is really talented. Many people who are talented, but some people are really talented, like Robbins and Fosse and Michael Kidd and Michael Bennett. And this is the next one. Irrespective of anything I say, I really believe that the musical theater has, the baton is being passed, and this young man will receive it. So we did the workshop and fell in love with it, literally, all of us. And I suppose that's an ingredient that's necessary even in this jaded, extraordinarily exorbitant period, that you have to really like it. So we really did. And a year later, we got the theater. It took a year, literally, to get a theater that we wanted. There were only 2 or 3 that we thought were appropriate. And this was the first choice. And then there we were a year later. So it's been a 3-year conversation, as it were. And the inclusion of everybody in artistic and financial decisions is very helpful towards in a production, because you get real input and you have no secrets. Much of what one reads about in the paper in terms of who did what and how much everything cost is not totally true. It's done for the self-serving posing of various interests. In this case, this is like bunk 12 in camp. Everybody genuinely trusts each other and likes each other because it's been a long trip. And nobody got out of the boat early. So it's kind of thrilling to do that. It's what it was supposed to be like.
Did you come in on the workshops or afterwards as a general manager?
After the workshop. I was working at the League with Harriet Slaughter at the time when Manny and I started to talk. So I didn't get to see the workshop, but I was pretty excited by the buzz that I had heard on the show.
And when you said, when Isabel said, come in, what did you do and what do you do?
Well, I handle all of the day-to-day business
Is that what
decisions.
general manager means?
Mm-hmm.
That,
And I monitor all the sales, and I monitor the payroll and the box office, and, you know, make sure, I call it like being a glorified camp counselor, to continue that
metaphor, right?
That metaphor.
Well, now also,
but she also cries when she's supposed to, and laughs when she's supposed to. There is a sensibility involved.
Yeah, no, exactly, and I mean, so that in a sense that you also oversee Bill's work too. I mean, it's not just the cast, and it's not just the box office.
Yeah, it's overall of all of it.
And the buzz that Abbie was referring to, this workshop in the Richard Rogers Theater, there were, I believe, 5 performances.
4 in a dress rehearsal.
A dress rehearsal and 4 performances, where we invited friends and other people who were interested, and there were up to, I don't know how many, 900 people.
I think
a lot of people.
Right.
So a lot of people in the theater saw this and responded, as we did, that this choreographer, director guy and these writers, they're up to something. They're really up to something. And it caused, for me, what became an out-of-town tryout, so to speak. They used to go out of town to New Haven or wherever they went, and you'd have a time period before you came into New York, and it could change, and there'd be a buzz from Washington or wherever it was. well, Manny will tell you that we can't afford those out-of-town things with big musicals anymore. But this was like a magic sort of mini version of that, because it just went right through the industry and everybody knew.
When was that? I remember there was
It was a year ago.
A year ago.
September.
A year ago, September.
And those who didn't see it were, immediately, like upset they didn't see it. So it was the right kind of buzz, and I think that the spirit of those workshops just infused everybody. And for this past year, that was our,
Would you
taking off.
still do that again rather than go out of town? Manny?
Oh, yes.
Well, now, you also had the same theater. It came up with another seminar, which was quite exciting, that you were you workshopped it, or I mean, you workshopped it in the very theater that you're in.
There is that intangible thing that happens. If you do a workshop in a rehearsal hall, not on a stage, there is something that doesn't happen. You always know you're in a room. If you go into a Broadway theater, sit down in a chair, and there's a stage, the actors also respond differently. They think hey, this is Broadway. This is wonderful. And all that drives the requirement up. The expectation from the audience is equally high. And the advantage was that even the stagehands fell in love with the show. So we went back to the same place, and there they were, our friends. At the end of the fourth workshop, the cast turned around and applauded the stagehands for their cooperation. So this has been a love affair.
What about unions? Is there a special coverage for that for your
Yes,
people?
there are all sorts of strange rules that Abbie understands.
Abbie, do you want to
used
explain
understand
some of it to us?
You have to speak five languages.
Well, for the workshop, I wasn't there, but we sat down with the local one. It was just local one. There was no other union
And what is Local 1?
stagehands.
Okay.
And we sat down and explained what we wanted to do and came up with a minimal crew that a workshop could afford at rates that we could afford. And they, in this particular instance, they put their little blue book aside and became
Wait a minute,
part
what
of our
is in the
family.
little book?
The little blue book is the rules.
You're going to
Is
get
that-
her.
is there-
She's going to be in jail when you keep asking.
I know, I know.
Well, we were able to work. We were able to bend some of the rules.
Was that because of the reputation of this producer?
I think it was the reputation of both Manny and Herschel Waxman.
Right, and so that when you sit down, there's a sort of a finite overall, well, this is how many in the crew you're going to have, or that's prescribed by how, and then you go for work
The
from
numbers
there.
in the crew in terms of when we came in with the Broadway production was you have to sit down with your stage manager and your department heads and say, this is the biggest move we have to make. How many men or women does it take to make this move? And that determines the maximum number of people you have from that one big move.
But
And
you
each
ac-
department has one of those
You actually
things.
work on the designs to satisfy some lunatic requirements. It's the tail wags the dog a little bit here.
But sometimes it's cheaper to automate a piece that flies in and out rather than put a man. A man is $100,000 a year. To automate one piece can be $500 a week. It's a lot less.
You don't pay him $100,000.
Now, you have to
Pension,
know-
welfare, vacation,
Right.
annuity, payroll taxes.
How do you know that? How do you get that knowledge?
How do I get that
Yes.
knowledge?
Where do you?
And where did you start and to learn this?
Well, I
Did you
started...
start as an actress?
No, I
One
started...
of the reasons why we do these
Okay, well, I
seminars. don't want
started
to put you on.
in Washington,
We want to know
D.C.
as much as possible.
I started in Washington, D.C., and I took a part-time job for Ticketron. Selling. They had a main branch in Washington, D.C. that spent 4 hours selling tickets, and then they serviced the rest of their Montgomery wards and all their outlets. And I took a job there
You
selling
weren't a theater
tickets.
major somewhere.
No, I was a psych major,
Just the same.
which is
That's it.
very, very necessary. And from there, I started working in box offices. And I worked at the Warner Theater with Sam Lahamadou, which was an old roadhouse, and it turned into a rock and roll house. And he wanted to turn it into, make it a touring house. And Mitch Lee and Manny Cloditis came through with The King and I, and the next thing I know, I was hired as the general manager's assistant, and I sold my car, sold everything, and moved to New York. And within a year, I was touring on the road as the company manager.
What about union? Did you have, was there a union?
I was not in the union at that time. I'm now in APAM. And I went on the road as the company manager of The King and I with Yul Brynner, traveling with 75 people, 24 years old, 25 years old, all by myself, no computers, no assistants. Crazy.
Wonderful.
And
backup.
from there, I started learning, and you just absorb it, you know.
So that when let's say Manny says, okay, this is where we go, you sharpen the pencil and start doing the calculations of the budgets from there, and that's your job, as
Yes,
I understand it.
to
Is that
do the
correct?
budgets.
Yeah, and then you obviously negotiated so how much you have to raise and go from that. But it starts, doesn't it, with you, with obviously the producer's oversight?
Yeah, you start with the producers, and you say, you know, you give them a budget, and they say, oh, we can't raise that kind of money. We need to pare it down, or, you know, and you work from there, and you work together with it.
Well, there's another thing, and this is actually for you, Manny. You went by something that I think is really less a business question and more of a sort of an aesthetic question. When you said it took us a while to, 3 years to get the right theater. I don't think a lot of people realize the importance of the right theater.
No, and
I want to have you talk about that a little bit, because it's critical, and a lot of people forget that it's not just a house.
It took us 1 year.
Okay.
3 years was the whole process of developing the show, of what was good, what was not, what was removed. We thought the ambiance of a theater is important, so there were only 3 in the city that we would approve. I think if you take this musical, Sideshow, and put it into a huge theater, it will be less effective. If you put it into a small theater, it might very well be effective, but the economics won't work. So there's a balance and an equilibrium to discover, and neither hurt the economics nor that artistic necessity. I mean, I'm sure all of you have been to theaters that are too big. And that's done in order to generate the economics. So we waited for one of the 3, and we would have taken the first one that came up. And if this one didn't come up, we would still be waiting. So I was not going to be forced into a decision that I thought was not valid for this particular piece.
How many seats?
1,400. But it's the configuration of the theater that I like. It has the floor goes like this. So there's an intimacy, and the intimacy that I think is required in this musical is crucial. I want you involved. I don't want you that far away.
And you didn't want a modern building either. You wanted an old house, an old
No, this
theater.
orchestra is very reminiscent of our bleachers. It's
Right.
very much of that bleacher effect.
Our
the way it
sets,
goes
our
up.
bleachers.
But also the staging brings you into that too as well. It's very well done. There's a sparseness to it that enables you to be part of what's going on. It doesn't get in the way.
Well, that's philosophic also. I think that there is a statement to be made in contemporary musical theater that goes back to fundamentals. Tell me a story, move me, sing, dance. You remember those? We used to have those things. Rather than, with all due respect, helicopter chandeliers and airplanes and
Houses.
other things that we'll call scenery.
When did you start casting for the Broadway production?
3 years ago.
What did they do in the meantime?
No, there were people selected for the first workshop, first presentation. They were fine, some were not, and we kept replacing. The last 4 or 5 people, other than the understudies and the swing people, were cast subsequent to the workshop itself. And even in rehearsal, the crew, producers, and directors fired a few people that we thought were not appropriate. Not that they're terrible, it's just that you have to fit a slot. It's an old-fashioned requirement of arrogance, again, excellence. If you want to play in the big leagues, you have to be good, you have to come on time, you have to work hard, and it's diligence. And
And that's a tough thing to do, still.
And
right?
Bobby Longbottom is a young man, but he's got that old-fashioned
Yeah.
toughness that I admire.
And
Very
hence the
good.
empty
Wonderful
chair here
performance.
today. That person was fired.
That's right. Okay, since you brought Bill, I'd like to add, because again, it's going back, reeling us back now. You're here with Sideshow. Where did you start in the theater as a press person?
I actually started as a gopher for a costume company named Barbara Matera, who is still thriving and did these costumes for Sideshow.
I mean, were you trained though?
Oh no, no, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I think that many people, especially today, have a better idea of what they're going to do when they get out of college, and I didn't really. I thought I'm coming to New York, and that was about it. And I got it through a friend at college related to the Materas. They got me a job, and in the morning I went to the Winter Garden Theater, went backstage, and got the mirror costumes from Follies, which is a huge, huge production. And I'd take them to the shop, and these little old ladies would sew mirrors on all day. And then I'd take them, and I'd take them back there. And I thought I had arrived, and this was Broadway, and I was a part of it. And then I got hired as an assistant to a press agent. And
why?
But that's a switch,
Yeah.
from costumes and.
well, I was looking to get connected with a show, and I didn't have an interest really in being a press agent. They needed someone who could write a paragraph or write a release, and that was this particular need in this office, and so I could do that. And so, because of a need and because you show up, sometimes it happens.
Well, you said you could do that. Why could you do that?
I was an English major at Colgate University,
Okay. All right.
and they taught me.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
I think
it's true. Yes, that was some preparation. But a lot of it's luck, and also a lot of it's communication. We all work so closely together that you have to get along every day in the trenches through the good, the bad, and everything else. And there's a lot of fast breaking action, and you just have to be ready to adapt. And I've been very lucky. I've worked with wonderful people, and through Manny, I've worked with Neil Simon for 20 years, and it's been terrific. The thing that makes this one different is that Manny, who's been threatening to retire for as long as I've been with him,
After this program.
but there's a generation of great master theater people, of writers and directors, but it's an older generation, and they are thinking they've done enough. And so to see a Longbottom come along who is so oriented to the theater, and you come into the theater as a member of an audience, and all of a sudden I was all charged up, like, I remember this. This is what, when I started, I thought this was going to be, everything was going to be like this, and it's not. And so this is like, I think all of us are so stimulated by what we're participating in and supporting, that it's a real thrill that you can only get in the theater.
It also shows that there is talent there. You just have to
That's right.
support it. Everybody says, where's, the American playwrights, where they are there if
That's
you'll
right.
take the time and the confidence.
That's right.
Which is important to have. Have you been with Manny all the time through all of his shows, starting from what?
21 years
21.
for me. I know I don't look at Isabel.
No, but no, you don't at all.
Thank
Manny
you.
doesn't
And he
look
gets,
at
he gets paroled in a few years.
I'm parole, right.
Yeah, but also we talked a little bit, and I'd like to get more into this later about.
I just want to say one thing, if I may. I'm sorry. This is unique now, too, like new talent coming on and supporting, but also to have an organization in producing where you find the same teams that have been going on for 21 years. That's something that we have not seen a great deal of.
No,
and
it's rare.
It's very
Well,
important.
used to
Neil
be the
Simon
norm.
is to be thanked in a way
Yeah.
for that, too.
It used to talk about that. It used to be the norm because we grew up in that era where there were.
There's a continuity in the
companies that-
organization.
It's interesting is that Bill, Abbie, myself, everybody went to school, everyone went to college, and nobody, their ambition was not to be what they are. I think that's true in the.
What was yours?
I
Apart
wanted
from
to
baseball.
really be a baseball player, right? You know about that, and in fact, that's my ticket into part of my career had to do with Robert Redford and I played baseball on the same team, and when Neil Simon did Barefoot in the Park, Mildred Natwick was not a good shortstop.
Rotten. Yeah.
So,
The Broadway show league.
Good field, no hit.
So Redford called up and said, come on, you have to play on this team, and that's how I met Neil Simon, who played second base. So it has nothing to do with my education, nothing to do with what I'm interested in. If you can pick up a ground ball, you have a career.
Right. Good hands.
But he didn't start out with that intention, nor did Abbie, nor did I. You were attracted to the theater, and you tried to find your place. You didn't quite know you were doing that. I've been asked about ambition. Did I have an ambition to do this? I didn't know what a producer did till I was in my 30s, and I didn't care.
What were you doing?
I came out of the Army. I made more money, actually, as a lieutenant in the Army than I did till I was 32 years old. And I did sweep the floor in front of the Renata Theater on Bleecker Street and worked off-Broadway. And then the government passed a law that said the closed shop is not permitted. You can have a union shop. So I was hired by Alex Cohn and David Merrick. And I know it sounds strange. It doesn't sound strange to me, but to other people. I actually did plays with, Tennessee Williams and those people. It impresses me now, but it didn't impress me then. And it was a company manager, and I thought, oh, I could do that. And one thing kind of led to another. And then that softball game.
And a learning process at the same time.
Yes, we were all trained. Yes. So I remember an actual moment, kind of epiphany kind of moment of walking, I was 35 by that time, of walking down 45th Street and actually realizing that they can't fool me anymore. It's a strange idea that you understood it now. And you also knew who told the truth and who didn't. And those who exaggerated, you just nod your head and know, put him in a certain category. And there's a great comfort in having some quiet expertise. Rather, it's not genius, it's just knowledge. But you don't get that training. There's no place to get the training except there, and you have to give up that delusion of security. I grew up in a time when you became a doctor. And if you didn't become a doctor, you became a doctor. And if you were a failure, you were a dentist.
Let's go back to Sideshow.
Yeah. Well, I do want to ask one quick question, though. Abbie, do you want to be a producer when you grow up?
Well, if I knew what I wanted to be when I grew up, that would be...
But general manager, it's the way stage manager...
I want to be a doctor.
Not a dentist, okay. All right. Yeah, right.
Let's go to casting. We've got the theater. Does that come before we have the cast? We talked a little bit before. And he said you had them for those many years.
We had the cast before the theater.
Yeah.
You can quite possibly lose people because you don't have a theater. And we auditioned constantly.
Did you use a casting agent? Did you use...
Yes. It was, that's yet another job.
Is that standard procedure now?
And that's a new, relatively new phenomenon, isn't it? A casting.
No, way back in the Merrick days, in the 60s, there was an in-house casting person. And you always need a casting person for principals. The chorus was dealt with differently. There would be a call, and 3,000 people would show up, and the choreographer would, the cattle calls they were called, and would select. But there is a difference today than in the old days. No good chorus kid was in a show more than 12 or 16 weeks. They went on to the next one. Now I'm sure recently read people have been in for 11 years. And
who pays the casting agent?
Abbie.
Personally.
So that comes out of the producer's budget?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's they get a fee, and then they get a weekly retainer.
A weekly retainer?
It's
while the show is...
It's ongoing work because you never know when somebody's, especially in the chorus, as Manny says, a lot of them do. After 3 or 4 months, they move on to the next show. So you have to...
Or get hurt, I mean.
Or somebody gets injured. And
so it is more economical to continue paying them than to rehire them for that, if somebody does leave the
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's the way it's evolved in terms of that's the norm. I don't know if they could, if they charged you a fee every time you needed to call them, it probably wouldn't be feasible for them.
It's a crucial job. The performers are that's who the public sees. And the difference, I mean, we've all seen Hamlet. Sometimes with a bad Hamlet, it's the single most boring play ever written. And with a good one, it's a masterpiece. You make the wrong selection.
They're wonderful voices that you have. Marvelous voices.
Yes.
And then that's another audition for the musical director. You have to really be able to sing in this show. Not because there's a microphone, but you have to genuinely be able to sing. You know, that's another old-fashioned value.
But the casting for Siamese twins adds a whole lot of other things to it in terms of how they relate to each other visually and singing-wise and everything else. And so this was particularly for this show. And they found two great ones.
And their body formation must be similar.
I mean, that you
Their
don't
waist must be connected. You can't have it like this.
How many auditions, how many people did you see in order to choose those two that would fulfill those requirements?
It was over an extended period of time. We always had one. Emily Skinner was there from the beginning, and so therefore the match had to be with Emily. The twins came in from Chicago, and they were wonderful. Really? And they cried through the whole audition because the similarity in life's sensibility, they understood instantly. And on the road companies, which we actually started planning yesterday, we'll go back to them, and they'll audition again. They don't look like the two girls. They're two dark-haired girls, but the thought of having actual twins who can sing is intriguing.
Well, that's a particularly, I imagine, critical thing. When you say you had one person coming along, then obviously you were trying to get a match.
Right, we had to find a match to Emily.
And the nice thing, and this goes back, I guess, with you, Bill, when you're not dealing with big names here, because you can't. I mean, I mean, you really have to find people who can do it. And that makes your job even a little bit more difficult. Because
it makes it more difficult, and also makes it much more fun, because both of these women are so excited about what they're doing and so excited to be on Broadway, and they say thank you, and you know, it's like, sometimes I'm like, am I in the star dressing room? And so that really is a joyful part of this production, that they really are excited and want to do everything.
Where did they come from?
Alice Ripley was in Sunset Boulevard and played the Betty Schaefer young screenwriter. It's not a huge part on Broadway, and Emily was in Justin, Jekyll and Hyde prior to that.
Alice, prior to Sunset, was in Tommy. She was the understudy to the mother.
Right.
And,
did Longbottom sit in on the first casting, on the first auditions?
I don't think so. No, there's a selection process. Many people show up. Some are inappropriate for us at this moment.
Who made the decision that inappropriate or come back?
It was a joint decision. I mean, Johnson Liff is the casting agent.
And Manny?
No. Once Johnson Liff filtered down to a group that he wanted to present to, Bobby and David Chase and Henry Krieger and Bill. They all sat and listened to them and went through all that audition process, and it was joint. We were there.
Everyone has a veto, and you don't, and it's mostly unnecessary to exercise it. You have to satisfy 5 people. And
well, also, I imagine when you find the right one, when you say it's usually unnecessary, because it's there and everybody sort of says, wow, that's the one.
Norm Lewis, who plays Jake, who's an African-American actor, they auditioned him, and he was really wonderful. So they called me up, and they said, we think we found him. And I went down, and he was ready. And he sang, and I leaned over to Bobby, and I said, offer him the job. Nobody does that. You wait, you call the agent, you make a mistake out of all of it. And Bobby said, really? And I said, yeah, just tell him. So he said, Norm, would you like to play the part? And he started to cry. He said, nobody ever did that before. And I said, well, why torture you for 5 hours? You want to do it? And he's tears coming down. And I said, you just blew your whole negotiating position.
Of course. Okay. It's great.
Let's get into the negotiating. You opened it.
Abbie?
Do you negotiate on salaries, or does the agent say, no, this is what he gets, and that's it?
Well, no, you negotiate with the agent.
Yeah, never with the
you know.
principal, sure.
You always, it's a negotiation because
As you negotiate
you
with
have a
the
budget.
That's
And,
right.
and you have to fit these actors into the budget. Or else you have to, you know, move on.
Well, this I would think would be, in the sense of Sideshow, because it's evolved. People have been with it. It's an ensemble. These are not, going back to the big name thing, you're not overweighting the budget with some, 900-pound gorilla star.
No,
Right,
true.
which I would think would make it a little easier to do that.
Can we break down the budget like $100, and what's the percentage of it? Can we find
Cast to
anything?
crew to,
Where,
music.
Where's your...
That's
What's your largest
complicated,
bite?
but
Yeah.
I think it would be fair. That's a variable. If you have a star, it's one thing. It's broken down into principals and chorus.
How many are in the chorus, considered chorus?
You have
six principals.
6 out of the 22, so
16.
16.
But we don't make that differentiation.
No.
It's a union differentiation, and I have a real objection to it. I think it kind of makes first-class and second-class situations that are unnecessary. But there is an old history of having a chorus, and many years ago they were abused. The chorus kids were abused, so they formed a group. It was called Chorus Equity, which ultimately merged with Equity, and they want to maintain a certain identity. So it's called the Pink Contract. I always jokingly say, can't we change the color at least? But so there's a pink contract and a white contract. I mean, it's
Well, now the
bureaucracy of an industry.
what are the Broadway minimums? Let's say for
I mean, you're not going to let them just say there's a pink contract and a white contract and not go further.
A blue contract.
No, but that's where I'm going.
The
with
pink
these.
contract is a
How much
chorus contract.
Okay.
And a white contract is a principal. Principals can be paid anywhere from minimum, which is about $1,100, to $1 trillion, $50,000 a week.
Right.
Madness.
And the pink contract?
And the pink contract invariably stays, if you're a generous, wonderful, expansive, charitable producer, as we are, you can get paid anywhere up to $1,750 a week. $1,750 a week.
For any...
For a pink contract.
for a pink contract also, but do you have to be able to sing or dance more than the minimum?
I'm using $1,750 because that's what we paid a first-rate pink contract dancer in Jerome Robbins' Broadway, which was another
Right.
show that we did. And he won the Tony in the pink contract as the best supporting actor. And he went from, he was the best, I thought he's sensational. It's Scott Wise, anyway, he's a wonderful dancer. So he went from $1,750 on a pink contract to $3,000 on a pink contract. It's...
But that was the producer's choice, right? To do.
Well, it's not, he has a position as well. I mean, he's that good, and he walked into the office and said, give me more money. And I said, sure, and that was that.
See how easy it is?
Yeah, it's a piece of cake.
There are some people that are just replaceable by a long list of others, and they don't have that kind of leverage. But I think it's a mistake to, I hate the hierarchy. I hate the idea that one person is less important than another, and in the shows that we do, we try to create an atmosphere of community, and I think it serves the show very well.
I want to pick up on that, Annie, because that's absolutely, I sense it as being true. You have a team, you have people who have been with you for 20-plus years. I think that is a major producer's job. Again, it's like choosing the theater, which people forget about. A producer, wouldn't you say, and the creation of a community within a production is a vital idea, and there's chaos too, and if there's chaos, the show tends not to work. Or is that...
Listen, I agree with it. One, I don't really want to walk into backstage into an antagonistic situation. Also, I think I'm old enough to be idealistic now, and I think that the truth is a lot easier. So there's no delusion, no the producer is something that people have to be afraid of, or the general manager. We walk backstage, we keep everybody in the company abreast of all the economics, so that there are no rumors. This industry is rife with rumors, and you hear stories on a daily basis. And it's better to keep, old military expression, keep the troops informed. So we keep the troops informed, and also we are accessible. So if they have a complaint or something, they come up and they articulate it. It doesn't mean that I'm going to agree. It just means that they're not afraid to ask.
What about producers when there is more than one producer, as we're getting more and more producers into a production? How does that work out? How do you deal? Who makes the decisions? Is there a senior producer? Is there... I know
for lack of a better term, yes. The reason there are so many producers listed above the title these days is because of the economics. When I worked for Merrick, Hello, Dolly was the most expensive musical ever done up till that point. That was 1964. Someone in the audience who knows here, actually. And the cost was $450,000. I was working on another one at the time, 110 in the Shade, was $350,000. Now, $450,000 won't get you through lunch. And musicals are ranging from $5 million to $16 million. And the discussions that are taking place among the corporations are, well, we can spend $20 million. Well, that's another kind of...
What's bringing that cost up so high?
Greed, mostly, in every area.
Yeah.
Everybody says, it's compartmentalized profit. Everybody says, everybody makes the big speech about the need for the cultural, the theater, in the culture, in the big picture, culturally for the country, and they're all self-righteous, and it's wonderful, and the intentions are good, and then they say, yeah, but I got to get mine. So the unions get theirs, the producers get theirs, the managers get theirs, and the actors get theirs, and the New York Times gets theirs, and the Post gets theirs, and they all make big speeches again, and they still take it.
But many careers, though, in the theater are a wonderful patch and a horrible patch, and sometimes the horrible patches can go on for a long time. So I think part of it, when you're on a winner, you're thinking, all right, when I'm hungry at the other end of it.
Saving for a rainy day.
Yeah, and I think many careers are that way.
Mm-hmm. I accept that the ticket price goes up right alongside it. And when we were kids, we went to the theater, and that wasn't such a long time ago. When we were kids, we went for $1.20, 90 cents, $1.80, some of you might remember. And even if a heavy date on a Saturday night to see Harry Belafonte and Almanac was $3.60 at the Music Box, because I remember the girl I went with. And now, it's a $75 ticket. So we're precluding an audience. There are generations that don't go unless they get it discounted, or they go through the wing, or they go through some...
What about your balconies? Why is it costed the mezzanine, which is really your first balcony, in many theaters, the same price as orchestra? And why isn't there...
In a musical, the mezzanine is very often the better seat. Forget the chicness of sitting in the fifth row. Fifth row for the musical seems to me foolish. You have no perspective at all. The farther back in the orchestra, the better off you are. And the mezzanine, the front of the mezzanine, is a glorious seat. Of course, you're not sitting next to Nicole Kidman or something, but...
But is that cheaper in your ticket price? Is there a decrease in your ticket price for...
In the front of the mezzanine, no. From the mid, there's a mid-section, that's a little less, and then the rear of the mezzanine is less.
What about, do you have a second balcony? Or
no, it's a rear mezzanine.
Rear mezzanine counts as. Mm-hmm. So there's no
But
longer...
Isabel, there's a ticket price. We're in such a small area, Broadway, and you can buy a ticket anywhere from $7 to $200 within that area.
How do you buy the $7 ticket? And
through TDF.
Yeah, the theater development.
Theater Development Fund. You can get into that theater on a Theater Development Fund $7 ticket. Maybe it's $12 now.
It's more than that, but
17.
the point is you have to be...
17, right.
Yeah.
Well, is there any provision made at the theater itself for rush tickets or senior citizens or youth ID tickets?
You do that in an organized way. There has to be a better system than the one we're using. The one we're using is somewhere in the 4th century, but maybe we'll grow up.
What do the stagehands get? What is the like the pink and white contracts? What is the average? I know there's no minimum. I mean, that's a negotiation. But let's say for the different kinds of stagehands, what is the minimum on that?
Somewhere between $1,000 and $1,500 a week is what the average stagehand will be paying.
That's a parameter. So they still get slightly less than the actors, but not by much. Some don't, obviously.
No, but there is as these shows become more complicated, the technicality, we have, as management, you have a tendency of putting down the stagehand. I don't have that feeling. I think the rules governing the behavior of all of our union members, equity, stagehands, press agents, managers, I'm a manager, we have a union, managers union, it seems to be somehow what of a contradiction, but it's the rules that have evolved that are preclusive of efficiency. It's a good technician is worth the money. The man that runs our sound at Sideshow, I hope he doesn't hear this program. It's worth more than we're paying him.
There goes his negotiation.
Yeah, right. Yes,
That's my negotiation.
Exactly. Bill, I wanted to ask you too. So we started. This is maybe asking you to reveal professional secrets, but part of the thing, apart from writing a release and overseeing the entire ads and the advertising and all that, you have to, am I right, develop some kind of easy rapport with the critics, right, and the writers, and how do you do that?
Well, what I say when the critics start coming, like 4 days before every opening now, they're given a choice and it's spread out and all the reviews come out on the designated day, usually Fridays, I usually say as I said to Mr. Longbottom or some of the actors, I said, this is a great show and you people are doing wonderful acting jobs, but if you want to see a real acting job, watch me on the sidewalk greeting the critics. Because and I think most press agents do, I stand out there on the sidewalk and I hand them to them, and many of the people, I would say the majority of the people have been there as long as I've been here, which is 27 years.
That's interesting.
And
I thought it had changed so much, especially the New York Times, that the turnover there was so much.
But the other thing is, what you're leading to, I think, is the relationships, and it's my relationships with the editors and the people who book shows, and over the years, so they know how to read me, and they know that my trust, or believability level is so much and somebody else's might not be. And if you deal, above board, you have access to these people. And so, I've been so enthused by Sideshow that there are some of my oldest people who say, Bill, are you putting me on? And I go, no. So, you sort of almost need to...
Believe me, trust me.
Yeah, but usually it's the practical level of they've got a job to do, they've got to fill up their paper, they've got a deadline, they want to go home and see the kids. It's just there's a routine and everybody has their job, and if you can do what you're supposed to do and enable them to do their job easily, I think that's basically it.
Well, there's one other. He's also... has to do with that extended period of time that we've all worked together. He's also a confidant of Neil Simon on the Simon plays, and Bobby trusts him. Bobby Longbottom trusts him, so that your job goes way beyond the designation of press agent. There's a need to have an opinion. He has an opinion. You don't sometimes you have to create an opinion. In the case of people who trust each other, it's unnecessary. You actually have one. You tell the truth. Or you say, I don't know, as opposed to this artificial opinion created by most people. What did you think? Well, it was wonderful. The second act needs a little work.
And also, as I say, you talk about the critics, but it's also the arts writers, because, the review is the review is the review.
Right.
And then
those
the
are
next one.
the most important ones. And there is a pecking order, which I hope nobody's watching this either, but there's certain things you want from a newspaper or a certain newspaper, and you want that before you want the other thing. But you have to navigate through all of that so that you don't alienate the one you don't want, because if you don't get the one you want the one you don't want. So it's tough, and the morning television shows are very competitive, and you book one and forget it. You're not in the other.
How important is that morning television show?
I think the morning shows are very important, especially when you have someone who they know, they recognize. To put them on that national audience, and Gene Shalit says, "It's great to have you back on Broadway," all of a sudden things click, and it's much easier to locate this person in this show and the idea of going there. But even on the unknown ones, and hopefully you'll see our twins soon, it's a forum that is just a terrific...
Does that offset a bad review in the media?
Well, I think so, in some ways, but what I really think is that the people who leave any show, and it's the word of mouth, the press agent cannot create a hit or ruin it, I don't think. But you can enhance what you have and do the best jobs you can, but it's what they say when they go home and see their friends.
How much time do you have for word of mouth to take hold?
That's right. That's tricky. Yeah.
It's a difficult question. The answer is, how much money do you have to wait? And also you have to be very objective about that judgment, about is the word of mouth good. Everybody says the word of mouth is good, but it's a delusion. Sometimes the audience just doesn't want you. And it's the public that ultimately makes the judgment. The critic can be helpful, and the New York Times can be extraordinarily helpful. In the long run, even the New York Times cannot keep a show that the public doesn't want running.
And isn't it, do you have a reserve?
Yes. We didn't have a reserve. Or we had a reserve and it wasn't sufficient, so we mortgaged Abbie's house, Bill's house, and my house, and we generated more money to promote the show. It's a joke, but it's a dedication. And it's not quite as bad as I said, but it's pretty close.
Well,
it's not as tough as I thought it was going to be, and I think it's just wonderful having you here. We've been talking to the producers and the workers in the vineyard, in the theater, of Sideshow, and the American Theatre Wing Seminar on Working in the Theater. We're going to take a break right now, breathe a bit, and then come right back with all the questions that I know are going to be asked and that I want to hear as well. I want to hear the answers. I want to also ask some of the questions. So.
Because I was involved in this study.
This is CUNY TV, the City University of New York.
We're continuing the American Theatre Wing seminars on working in the theater, coming to you from CUNY, the Graduate Center of the City University of New York. And this seminar is on the production, and it is a team of Sideshow, Emanuel Azenberg, who is going to tell us how simple it is to put on a hit show, and a really very good one. Manny, would you pick this up? Because you know how to do it.
How do you do it? My first recommendation is that you find something you care about and you feel that expresses something of yourself. I know that's almost, it's not chic from producers, but I think it's certainly crucial and certainly part of the way I was trained. Subsequent to that, you have to option the piece, or you have to own it in a sense. Your obligation is to be very helpful artistically to the extent that you can be, and to the extent that your peripheral position, which is what a producer is in the art, in the creation of a piece, allows you. You're fully responsible for the economics, and you have to go out and raise a lot of money, which is sometimes difficult, but sometimes more embarrassing, because it's not really an investment. It's a crapshoot. And you have to, it's a cultural crapshoot, which in my mind justifies it for myself, that we're trying to do something that might nudge the world. That's a Stoppard line, it's not mine. And that commitment, that heartfelt commitment, justifies your behavior. If you raise the money and the project develops, then you have to find a theater for it. To my mind, it should be a theater that is very suitable for the feel of the play or the musical. When it opens, praying is a big help. Good reviews is equal to praying. A combination of good reviews and a little prayer, and you have a success, and then the work starts all over again. Maintaining the success, maintaining the quality of the show, additional companies. These days a musical is international. So there'll be a company on the road in the United States, there might be two. One in Toronto, one in London, Germany, the rim of Asia, Australia, and it takes a great deal of energy and commitment to try and maintain that quality. The money no longer becomes a problem, but the quality always is a problem. Is it something I would recommend? I would recommend that you become very well trained so that it's not a mystery, and that you understand the risks, not only financially, but the pain of failure. Because if you do commit emotionally, it's a love affair gone awry. And it's worth the trip because there's passion involved, and wherever there's passion, there's potential pain. I've done a few of these, and I no longer can become a doctor or a senator or other ambitions, and although it was not an ambition of my youth, since I had no idea what a producer was, but I've had, it's been a blessing. I've had a good life, and the theater is
Nicely said. Nicely
I'm
said.
not dead yet, though.
Would you do it again?
Would I do it again? Yes, I would. I don't think without hesitation. There might be a few things I would do differently. There would be one or two shows that I would not have done, but only one or two, because those were shows that I listened to other people's opinions as opposed to mine. You get in a room and everybody says, "This is a smash. This is good. You'll make $42 million," and then it comes around to you and you say, "Oh yeah, I'm in." And then you find out that nobody made the money, the movie rights were never sold, and you didn't care, and you don't.
What speaks to you about Sideshow? We talked about the chaplain coming from Ringling Brothers too, but what speaks to you about this show?
There's a song at the end of the first. I'm glad you asked that, John. There's a song at the end of the first act that breaks my heart every night. And the song is a glorious ballad that the two girls sing called "Who Will Love Me As I Am." And that's not about Siamese twins. It's about everybody. At 4 o'clock in the morning, I don't believe there is a human being, when he wakes up, wonders, do the people who love me really know who I am? Or am I so complicated that no one will ever know? And it's a heartfelt, passionate, wonderful song. And I think that this evening, this musical is much more about who will love me as I am than Siamese twins or freaks or anything else. The obsession with the grotesque is nonsense. The passion of the evening is exactly that are we tolerant enough to recognize the sensibilities of people who are a little different, and are we willing to acknowledge those sensibilities and be a decent human being? And that's what this evening is
And accept
about.
yourself, too.
Yes.
A
And
lot of people
the
with definition.
recognition. Well, I'm sorry, you're right. And the recognition is that recognize who you are. Maybe try to
That's
improve
almost
it.
that really is a deep definition of integrity, i.e. integration into what you are.
Good.
And how, you know.
Yeah.
Hey, sir, to get back to the dollars and cents, marketing has become another important word and also an important item in the budget. who decides on that, Bill? Are you in on that?
Well, I'm in
Is
on
that
it,
part?
sure.
And then do you have someone separately you do the
Yeah, there's
marketing?
an advertising agency that for each show goes with, and the one we're with, happily at the moment, is as crazy about the show as we are. So they're as driven to find different ways. But we live in a television world, you know, and that for a big musical, sooner or later, is that's it, you know.
Well, you've got to. I know we've got to probably move on to other things, but I would love to at some point figure out how you go to a television morning show and sell them on the idea of Sideshow. Because it's not like you're selling some gigantic stuff.
But that's publicity, isn't it? That's
Right.
public relation. That's not marketing.
That's bribery.
Okay.
Never.
Do you reach out to groups and organizations outside of New York, for example, women's groups or
Yes, and that
church
usually
groups
comes
or
after
whatever?
you're up and running. Right now, the build up to the opening and the takeoff, that we're in the nuts and bolts, as it were, of all of that kind of stuff. And as we're here longer, it absolutely branches out to different special interest groups or people who can identify or are interested. And we have letters from people who danced with the Hilton sisters in real life, and you know, there's just a wealth of response to this. But at the moment, it's about getting the immediate hardcore theater-buying audience in there and then building out from there.
Did you have a group sale, a large group sale before you opened?
No, the resistance is the preconception. We got one letter, though, to answer your question and to add to what Bill said, from someone. It was a lovely note, who said he performed with the Hilton sisters at the Palace, and he said he hopes that we are not going to treat them like freaks, because they were two delightful women who were compassionate, warm, and you read it and you realized that you were dealing with the reality
Well,
of
that's what came
two individual
through
human
in-
beings
in the show.
who deserve some consideration. No, we didn't have a lot of groups, because if you have a choice between The Lion King and Ragtime and Sideshow, you're going to choose the safe one. And the chairman for various committees, the decision to buy groups isn't done by a chairman of an organization. So you have to satisfy the wishes of what you think will be the majority of those people in the organization. And the other shows are much more acceptable.
What do you mean, the organization? What-
If you,
Charity or-
the chairman of an organization decides to have a theater party, you make a choice of the show you're going to see. You have to answer to your constituency. I mean, we've all been in the theater when, in the Neil Simon history, there's always a woman that gets up and yells at the end of the show, if Neil had written a funny play, "Shirley, you picked a winner this time."
Absolutely.
As if she wrote it. And Neil sits there looking, what about me? What about me?
I'm going to turn to questions now, and would you please step up?
Hi, my name is Breland Brooks. I'm an actress. I had a question about press and the media. How do you generate interest? You kind of touched on this briefly with like a talk show or the newspapers to write a specific story about Sideshow. Or
It starts, especially when you know something is coming, the longer time you have, the better. But it starts with me talking to the people that I know and say, in a year from now, we're going to do this show. And also, if you're working on multiple shows, when you're booking them to see a show that you're working on right now, and if you know what's coming, it's an opportunity to speak without grinding the axe. And these people are interested, and as I said before, not only because they like the theater, but also because their job is to fill the page in an interesting way. So I think it's the relationships, and I just keep in touch with.
Well, I would think doing your research, too, like the fact I found out that they were, just yesterday, that they were married, one was married at halftime at the Cotton Bowl.
That's right. And, you know, those details you do have to know. So you do a quick study, whatever the subject is. And we worked on a wide range of subjects with Mr. Azenberg. So you have to learn a little bit.
Hi, my name is Norma Goldberg, and I have another question for you, Bill. Many reviewers, or at least some of them, make references to historical or literary influences on the play, especially, I think, the review of the Times of Sideshow did that. How much do you give the reviewers as far as background?
Again, that can change from if it's a real history sort of show, sometimes you give more. But I think the difference with the system of them coming 4 days earlier, 3 days earlier, it gives them time to really work on something. In the old days, when they left the theater at 9:30 and had to type the review in an hour, I think you got much more of their immediate feelings and how did they feel and how did the play hit them. And in some cases, you feel like the reviewers just went to the encyclopedia and boom, and they show that they know all about this subject. From review to review, you can't. I was interested in the book he was talking about, but on the other hand, I'm always interested in how do they feel, how do they react.
Yes.
Hello, I'm Howard Goldberg. I have a question for Mr. Azenberg. Since economics is such an important factor in the theater, how do you strike a balance between artistry and popularity?
My first response is that I don't think, except for those genuine failures that I've had, and those are the ones that you choose because you don't care about it, or you don't really care about it. The first response is, do I like it? Does it talk to me? And then I'll deal with the economics. There are some. I suppose that there have been occasionally things that I was really passionate about and didn't do because of the economics. But the passion and the commitment comes first, and then I'll make the economics work, or as best I can. I don't know. There's some arrogance to that, but. And then you have to, yes, indeed, strike a balance. It must fit into a theater. The economics must make some sense. I don't think we've ever done a show that if it were a hit, the investor would be hurt. The goal is that if it is a hit, the investor will make a killing.
Thank you.
My name is Sylvia Katz, Mr. Azenberg. I'd like to know what Mr. Longbottom's previous theatrical background was. And also, I was curious about who selects the production's creative staff, such as the musical directors, choreographers, arrangers, and so forth.
The first answer is Bobby Longbottom was a dancer in one of the companies of Chorus Line, 42nd Street, and the other one, Me and My Girl. So his background is with some choreographers that have had some experience. He also does the show at Radio City Music Hall.
He does the show.
Yes,
the Christmas show.
And
Pageant, also.
So, and his commitment is wonderful. The selection of everybody else falls into departments. Normally the composer will choose who the conductor is. Everybody has an approval. You try not to exercise it.
Who is everybody?
I can override, and the director can override somebody's choice. If I have a particular antipathy to a designer, I'm going to say I don't like him. But the musical director and the arranger and the copyists in the music department fall under the jurisdiction, as it were, of the composer. And as long as he selects people that have a history of competence and ability, you try not to interfere. There's a balance of trying to pretend to be an authority. Sometimes you don't have to be. Sometimes people actually select good people without your help.
Hi, my name is Norberto Bogart, and I would like to ask to Mr. Azenberg, what kind of specific marketing campaign are you using for this show?
You'd have to ask them.
Okay, then.
When marketing came up, it's a word that almost backs me up. I think it's a euphemism for selling, isn't it? There used to be people who sold. There were salesmen. Now they're marketing, which sounds better. But it's an area that I would dump over on them because I don't know anything about it, and I'm never quite sure whether hanging posters in a supermarket sells tickets and giving away 2 for 1 if you buy a grapefruit, and all of those things are, it's not from my time, it's now. And they're so much younger than I am. So it's,
What about
it's their
you, Joe?
jurisdiction.
Well,
think
he
it's
is deeply suspicious, in other words, of marketing, because a lot of it does sound ridiculous. What I think the marketing is, again, what I said about the core audience, that your first audience, to me, is the people who keep up with it, are interested in it, and have a habit of buying tickets. And those are the inside people. So they get their information through the Times and the magazines and all those normal places. When you go out from there, and something like Cats, for instance, there's 15 years later, there are enormously successful supermarket and face painting and all kinds of things that really, really reach out and get to people that might not otherwise come to Broadway. And that may well happen with Sideshow, but I always think you get the inside group and then you build out.
Abbie, what do you think?
Yeah. Hi, my name is Annette Salsgaard, and I came here from Sweden to pursue theater. And I'm just really curious, how do one really go about getting financing and backers?
Oh. You mean initially? Initially, it's not so simple. After you've done it for a while, you have this backlog of people. It's a grind, and it's a discipline. One, I suggest whatever it is that you're going to do, you better believe in. Because you're not asking them to invest, you're asking them to kind of give you their money. Because the theater's not an investment. And then you ask everybody that you know. Does anybody here know a rich person who is foolish enough to invest in the theater? Or sometimes, on occasion, is smart enough? Because whoever put their money in rent ain't losing anything. And you use rent or the successes as a frame of reference. But I suggested that you be as honest as you possibly can. Because people read the con jobs. And if you're first starting out, you're not going to have a track record. And your integrity will be crucial. And then you better hire a few people around you who will confirm that your economic presentation makes some sense.
Does that come about because of your reputation as a producer? Do you have a core that will come into whatever you do now? Because
I would like
10
to think
years
so.
ago, you were recognized as...
Well, we have a relatively unique situation, Isabel, because the Neil Simon's is an investment, not a crapshoot. So there have been people over the years that have seen our statements and have gotten checks, shockingly enough. And so we have that. But when you do a musical, you have to go way past that.
Why do people invest in shows?
Why? I think that it ranges from a genuine cultural interest, support, personal relationships, delusions of glamour, the need to participate. What am I going to do with all this money I made on the stock market? I suppose somewhere in there is everybody. I don't think anybody puts the money in as if it were AT&T. I think there are other agenda, and not all evil.
I think it's a great place to be if you've got all that money, too.
Hi, I'm Kwanda Johnson, and I'm a performing artist who was on tour earlier this year, Manny, with Carol Channing and Hello Dolly. My question is for you, Manny, and it's being a veteran producer. What is your vision for the future of musical comedy on Broadway, musical theater on Broadway, especially in lieu of the successes of Rent and The Life and now Sideshow?
It's twofold. One would be the hopeful and affirmative one, which is hopefully that there's a world out there of music not of my generation. Rent, we have something to do with Rent, and when I first went to see it, I had to take my oldest daughter. And when it was over, I said, "Karen, is this good?" She said, "Yeah, it's good." It's good! Because it's a sound that is very valid for a number of generations of people, and not for my generation. And that's the evolution of the theater. There was a time prior to Rodgers and Hammerstein called operetta. And then the operettas went away. And then there was the book musical. And then they went away. And then there was the, what company began that? Was the
Concept.
The concept musical. So there will be an evolution of what the musical is based on the music of the day. And when the musical theater will be strengthened when you use contemporary music on the stage. So if you had hit records that came out of Rent, or Whitney Houston records 2 songs from Sideshow, that will be a plus. The economics, on the other hand, are debilitating. And I think that unless something happens to change it, there are going to be musicals produced by Disney and Time Warner and by major corporations, because musicals are becoming international, and somebody got to look at the Cats' total gross over $15 million, and it's in the billions or something like that. So that, and merchandising is also connected to it. So, and I think that's dangerous. Then you have theme park kind of potential, and...
Is there a cast album?
We're recording it a week from...
Monday.
Thank you.
When?
A week from
3rd.
Monday. Everybody, please buy it. It's wonderful. If you don't like it, call me up. I won't give you my number, but...
But, you know, there is that it's, just to interject, there was a time, which I think is, I hope is going to come back, when the top 10 musical hits on the radio and were from Broadway. And now they're, God knows, from anywhere.
Right.
And one would hope that they would get back, that you'd hear the top.
Absolutely. If the major media is television, to a certain extent even radio these days, that if Broadway were producing musicals whose music were put on television and on the radio in some consistent way, we would have a broader spectrum audience across the country.
Hi, my name is Lisa D'Souza, and I had a one-part question, but it's now become a two-part question. First of all, I was wondering, how much approximately does it take to run a show like Sideshow a week?
Our weekly operating is around $330.
Okay, and then
That's our break even.
Sorry, and then my second question was something that you said, Mr. Azenberg, what you were just talking about. I mean, are there plans now to get Whitney Houston to record a song and put it out there to really, you know, expand Sideshow and
There have been certainly a number of reviews that have referred to Whitney Houston, that Whitney Houston should look to Sideshow for some recordings, and Celine Dion and Mariah Carey and...
Barbara.
Yes, we have the arranger, Harold Wheeler, is a friend of Whitney Houston's. So,
Okay.
But all of this gets very complicated, because you only get people when you can only get them to record when they're recording an album. No one will make a single on their own anymore. So if Celine Dion has got one slot left, you hope that she will pick it up from here. Mariah Carey just finished an album, so she's done. You're moving into another world of the music world, which I absolutely have no knowledge of, but the little that I have is that it's not as simple as I would like it to be, so that, hey, I have a great show, why don't you come and record it? They don't do that. They used to do that, when Broadway was exactly what George said. If you had a hit, What Kind of Fool Am I, from Stop the World, bang, there were 4 recordings in 5 minutes.
Right.
And Fair Lady had 3 hit songs on the hit parade. The hit parade, remember that?
One quick working question. Who keeps the show fresh? Who gives notes when the show has a long run?
Well, Bobby Longbottom is so dedicated that he hasn't missed but 1 performance. It's like, I think he has an addiction. He can't stay away. If he stays away for a day, he's back the next day. But there's a stage manager, there are dance captains, there are these other jobs.
What's each one's role? Quick.
Excuse me?
What's each one's role?
Stage manager is what we call the production manager, who will run the show, call the cues, and also get somebody ultimately to call the cues, so he watches and makes an evaluation of performances, so you keep the show up. We have an assistant director, Tom Kosis, who is working at the music hall at the moment, but he'll come back and he will come in and watch the show. and call Bobby if he thinks it's slipping, and give notes that night as well. Sometimes there's a note just because something happened. It's not a criticism, it's just a reminder. And also, this is hard work. And those kids go out there and sing their eyes out. So maybe somebody has to get a break.
Could
And
we go on with this afterward? I'm going to have
out?
to say thank you so much for being here. And we've been at the American Theatre Wing Seminar Zone working in the theater at CUNY, and this has been an extraordinary panel that we've had here. It's the producing team of Sideshow, the wonderful show that is now on Broadway. So thank you very much for being here. Thank you, George White, for being our esteemed moderator. Bye-bye.
Malcolm. We'll see you
Malcolm, are you going to be here this afternoon? Or do I need to go this afternoon?
This is very good. This is very good.